Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back. Um, in this video, I'm going to talk about undeposited funds, or it is also called payments to deposits. If you don't know who I am, my name is Brett Klein. I own a bookkeeping business called Klein Bookkeeping, and I like to just share what I have been learning as I've been gaining new clients. And this is something that I came across when I was doing a cleanup, and it just took me a long time to understand what actually happens in QuickBooks when you're receiving funds and doing it through QuickBooks payments or other third-party apps. So I'm just going to start with the most simple form and then kind of work through the more complicated stuff. So I have a client, my first bookkeeping client. I sent an invoice in QuickBooks, and he decided he didn't want to pay the QuickBooks fee, so he just sent me an ACH from his bank to mine. So very simple. I'm just gonna demonstrate this as a deposit from 2011, so you can actually see what it looks like in the reports. So when we come up into a balance sheet in 2011, you'll see I've already created the invoice for $1,000, and then my client just paid me directly. There is nothing in between with QuickBooks. So when I sent it, this is what my balance sheet looked like. Had $1,000, nothing received in the bank. And then if I switch this to cash, you should see that I haven't actually generated any kind of income yet. Okay, so very simple. I just go back into my bank transaction. I see the deposit on the first. Perfect. And then whatever income account it is, I'll record that and post it. Simple enough. And then it should get rid of that accounts receivable. As you'll see, that should drop to zero, right? And then I should have that income in the profit and loss. So I think that's pretty straightforward. Most of people, I'm sure most of you already know this. Sorry, I did that wrong. So the accounts receivable is still in there. Uh, you wouldn't categorize it, you would match it. So that's always an honest mistake that I think a lot of people make. So if we just go back in here, we'll undo that. So we don't want to do that. If we're creating invoices, we always want to match it. So we'll click on this match here. Okay. You'll see the type says invoice, and I'll explain why that's important. So we'll match that, and that should be good. Okay. So easy enough. Again, I'll show you what this looks like in the reports, just so you have an idea of what is happening. This was my basic understanding when I first started, and I thought it was just as simple as that. So there it is. It goes into the bank account. Your accounts receivable is zero, and then the net income is 1,000. And if I switch this to cash again, it'll show that reserves and then the net income. All right. So when we go into, let's say, a situation where I'm sending these invoices now and my clients pay me through the QuickBooks payments. Now it gets a little bit more complicated because QuickBooks is doing stuff in the background that you're usually not seeing. So I'm going to share my personal books here for a quick second. So if I go into this settings and the account and settings, and I click on this payments tab on the left, when you come down to this chart of accounts, it says, tell us where in QuickBooks to automatically record. So I chose this bank account because I thought I needed to choose something. So I put in the bank where I knew all of my deposits would come into for my invoices. And I believe once you choose something, you can actually take it out. So you always have some sort of bank account in here. I've had a client, when I came in here, they had a cash account. So anytime they would get paid with QuickBooks, those deposits would go into that cash bank account. What I'm assuming for most people that aren't putting anything in here, it automatically just has a blank slate in here. So you'll probably see that there's nothing in here. And what I'm assuming is that because it's blank, QuickBooks is automatically sending it to an undeposited funds account or a payments to deposit, whatever it is in the chart of accounts. So we sent 2 invoices. I have 2 invoices that are, we'll say this one was 1,000, and I sent one to Dave for $750. But we're going to ignore these. We'll pretend that these are not in the bank account. So the bank feed, all I'm seeing is this $1750, right? Great. So I already have the invoice, and I'm going to show you the invoices now. Okay. So I have this invoice from Dave for $750, and I have this invoice here for Alex for $1,000. So nothing has happened yet. All I have is an open invoice right now. It's showing overdue. Okay. Now, when I go to match this, you're going to see that there's a $1,750 in here for Jennifer Gardner. So this can be a very confusing thing when you're using the QuickBooks payment system, because when 2 clients actually pay on the same day, then QuickBooks is just going to combine those 2 and just send that full deposit into your bank account. So what is happening is you send these invoices, and we'll say Dave and Alex paid. So what is going on in the background is QuickBooks is receiving these payments. And as I was showing you, so we'll say we have Alex here, and we're going to say that this was paid on the 1st, right? And this is going to undeposited funds because we had nothing marked as I was showing you in the other page, assuming that it's already going to undeposited funds. And this payment method will say something like QuickBooks payments or something similar to that. And then we have this invoice that's going to be marked as received. So this is happening automatically in QuickBooks. we're not actually doing this manually. And this is where I really got caught up because I just did not understand what it all meant. And it was really throwing me off. And I figured this out because of what I'm about to show you. So we're going to do one more of these. Again, we're not actually doing this. This is already happening in QuickBooks. And we have Dave here who also paid on the same day, right? For the $750. This is going to undeposited funds. And then once this is received in QuickBooks, you're going to see in the invoices that it's marked as paid. Okay. So this is also important to understand. I think this is what I've been actually learning. So it's marked as paid. That means that it is received, but it hasn't reached our bank account yet. Okay. So if we come into our reports, I'm sure a lot of you have looked at the balance sheet and you see this undeposited funds and you don't even know what to do with it. You don't know how to clear it out. You don't know why it's sitting there. But here's the undeposited funds now. Those two invoices are sitting there, right? And so what we do is, because that was already shown as paid, all we got to do is categorize it or match it in the bank feed. So we see this, we're like, great, $1750. Well, we have an invoice open for Jennifer for $1750. So QuickBooks is seeing that. So we're going to click match. And we would assume, oh, great. That's perfect. Jennifer paid us. That matches perfectly, and we would match it. But as you can see from this type, the difference is it says invoices here, and then these two say receive payment. So I think this is how you can indicate where you need to actually match these. You want to see the date, and it should be close to when you received it, and now it's in your bank account, and we want to click on these receive payments, because technically if they are paying through QuickBooks or some third-party app, maybe these would automatically be received, and now you can match them appropriately. So that's one way to look at this. So we're going to match that. And then we're going to go back into our reports. And when you see the balance sheet, we should see this undeposited funds at 0. And then the other side of it is it's hitting your bank account. Okay. Our undeposited funds are at 0. And then that's going to hit our net income like I was showing before. Okay. And then if we look into our invoices, now they're showing as deposited. Okay. So that's the second part of this. Now, the tough part that I was trying to get through is I was doing a big cleanup. So if you come into this new here and you click on bank deposit, this is where it shows all the undeposited funds. So you may find that you're just going to have a big long list in here of undeposited funds. And that's probably because the client or another bookkeeper, they were just recording things in the bank feed as just income, and they weren't matching it to anything. And maybe they couldn't find the match, so they just assumed it was just a normal deposit. So we are going to look at, let's first go into the bank register, because I think this is important to see. So you see that these deposits were made, right? So this is our bank account. This was our invoice. And when it was received from QuickBooks automatically, that that came in. So this was the first one. So the $1,000. Okay. So that's just going to stay as accounts receivable. This one shows as a deposit, and that was the $1,750, right? And then if we look into the undeposited funds, now you can see that these are reconciled. So before you actually match these to that deposit, these would show up like this: Alex Smith and Dave. They would just be sitting in here and they would just be uncleared. So once you match them, they get reconciled, and that's why the balance is 0. Okay. So let's look into what it looks like when you have old transactions that you don't know what to do with. So we have these invoices, and my situation was I'm in November of 2025, and I'm doing a cleanup, and there are invoices that were marked as received back in 2024, and my client has already filed for that year, so I'm not even worried about what's happening before then, before 2025. So I need to figure out how to clean up his books without going through this whole process of trying to figure out what matches to what. So I'm going to explain this a little bit. So even if it was back in January, February, March, and you cannot match anything from the bank feed into these undeposited funds, there might be, this is the way that I've learned that you can at least get it caught up until you can figure out a better system with your client. So we're going to assume these were made in 2024, right? And back on these dates, they were received. So we had Dave here. He paid back in November of 2024. And I'll change this date. And it was sent to undeposited funds like it normally does. And we'll say that they're paying with physical checks. Okay, so Dave paid. My client received this, and it's just marked paid. Okay, and then our other one was for $550. And we'll do the same thing here, and we'll just record this. So those are paid. But when we come in here and we're trying to clean this up, we have all these transactions. Maybe there's like 75, 100 of these. All different dates. We have no idea where they came from. We just know that it's just sitting in this undeposited funds. So what we can do, possibly, is we know like one of them was for $2,000, right? And I'm going to take these out so this isn't confusing. we're pretending that these are not in the bank feed. So we come in here and we say, well, there's a $2,000 invoice that was marked paid, right? We come in here, we look at the posted. There's nothing pending for $2,000. We have no idea how that was paid. But most likely, the client had like 3 or 4 checks that they deposited in the bank, and you're going to have this weird amount that's not going to match exactly to each individual invoice. So we may be able to figure that out, but if we're looking at months in the past, that might be a little tedious. So basically what happened is those were marked as received during that time. And whoever the bookkeeper was or the client came in here and just did the same thing. They marked it as an income. And that was that. They didn't worry about it. They just marked it as an income. You can still reconcile the bank. It's always going to match because that's actually what came into the bank. So we have this, and it probably got reconciled. But we have the undeposited funds sitting in here, and you'll see how they're just blank. So they have not been deposited. So one way that I have learned to, well, let's first look at the reports. So we have the balance sheet. And we're going to have these undeposited funds that are still sitting in here, but it's still recording this income because we categorize it as an income, right? So we have that $25.50 now that's just sitting in there, and we cannot match it to anything. So we're going to go into the bank deposit, and we're just going to clear this out. Once we know that these have been received, well, we know they've been received because they're sitting in this undeposited funds account. And the total is $25.50. So what we can do is we know it's income. So whatever income you're using, we'll put that income account, and then we're going to put a negative $25.50 in there. And that's going to mark it as 0. And we're going to save and close that. So now we should see these undeposited funds sitting at 0. And you know this is important because that reduces our actual income. We're not having like a double income in our profit and loss. Okay. So now we have those undeposited funds back at 0. And when we come back into our invoices, we'll see that they are now deposited. So that is how I figured out how to get around all of that. And hopefully that's helpful. And I know this can be pretty confusing because you're trying to understand why things are not matching up and why your income account does not seem to look right. But in the end of this, if you can get it cleaned up, you should have an accurate report as far as the income. So if we even just click into here, we have 4,300, and we'll see that that 2550 was now marked off. Okay, and then we still have some outstanding invoices to give us that total. So hopefully that makes sense. If you guys have questions, feel free to leave a comment. But this is something that was very confusing for me for a long time, and that's the best way that I know that I can explain how to work through that and clean up a client's books if nothing seems to be matching and you just got to get it back to square one. So thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.